Do you ever feel like a hamster on a hamster wheel, not getting anywhere new? Perhaps you've hit a plateau that has you asking, is this it? Have you accomplished all you've set out to do in life and are not feeling as fulfilled as you thought you would? It is normal at midlife to reassess what's working for you and what's not. It's also normal to want to reclaim your time, your energy, and your joy. Let's make the best out of the second half of our lives by having more fun, experiencing more peace, and feeling more joy. If any of this resonates with you, then this podcast is for you. I'm Megan Bayless Bartley. Now let's get ready to shift our shit. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to part 2 of episode number 3, where we're talking about unhealthy boundaries. And we've been sort of identifying what unhealthy boundaries are in the last part. And now we're going to talk about what to do with unhealthy boundaries. And Elizabeth and I were talking about this idea that, you can have your own unhealthy boundaries with people, with food, with whatever. And then other people can have unhealthy boundaries that you sort of participate in or don't know what to do with. So, Elizabeth, what's on your mind about this? What to do about unhealthy boundaries?
Well, I think we first have to identify where we're getting hooked in. So, if it is dealing with someone else's unhealthy boundaries, a lot of times that looks like a boundary violation that maybe the other person doesn't even know about.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of times we say our family members are like, "Don't you want to come and do this?" And deep down inside, you're going, "No, I don't want to spend my money that way, or I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to." I don't enjoy the activity that you're offering. And it can be as simple as you want to go shopping with your family members, or you just really don't enjoy the mall and it's crowded at this time of year.
Mm-hmm.
It can be really easy, but it's important for us to kind of be able to look at it to say, okay, is this something I want to do? And to feel comfortable to say, no, it's really okay for me to say I don't like crowds, I don't like shopping. I prefer small, intimate events of just another couple or just a couple of friends than a great big blowout bash. And that's okay to have those personal choices. And a lot of times I think we have a hard time kind of saying, no, I'm a little more extroverted or I'm a little more introverted. And
Mm-hmm.
that's going to make a difference in what feels comfortable for us and how to manage it. So I think the first thing you have to kind of decide is this about my boundary? Or is this an observation of someone else's boundary? Do I feel like I'm being guilted into doing something? Do I
Mm-hmm.
feel like somebody is coming to me going, wouldn't you really love to teach something? Wouldn't you really love to come help with my fundraiser? And it's like, no, I really wouldn't love that. I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate you asking so
Mm-hmm.
deeply,
Mm-hmm.
but I wouldn't love that. And so it's about knowing ourselves and kind of feeling comfortable to say, no, thank you.
Yes,
I
and trust.
appreciate you asking.
Right. And trusting that when you say no, or you say, I can't, or whatever, however it comes out, that that person is going to be emotionally okay. Right. Because I think that's where we can get hooked too, is worrying about, is that person going to get mad at us? Are we going to hurt that person's feelings? How is this going to go sideways somehow or whatever? And that might be because we have had dealings with that person before, or we want to be liked by a certain group or person or whatever, right? So part of this is, how do we trust ourselves, listen to ourselves, know ourselves, and allow other people to know themselves and best take care of themselves?
Yeah, I think a lot of times when we look at the extremes of this, right? So if we look at the extremes of somebody who's in a codependent relationship where they're married to an alcoholic and they get kind of in this tricky space of, I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to take care of this problem for you. And it's like, no, I actually don't want your help. I actually don't want that assistance. And being able to say, no, thank you is really tough
Right.
because if the other person's really pushing at us and we're really having a difficult time, then it's tricky of how do we move through this? How do I let go of my concern for your feelings and really pay attention to my concern for my feelings?
Right. Or even, the other thing that's interesting with that is when people are in a relationship and then they have kids and there is like alcohol abuse or what, all these different things. And they're worried if I leave this person, my kids are going to go spend 50% of the time with this person who is struggling with alcohol addiction or abuse, right? And I don't trust that is going to be a good thing for my kids. The thing that people don't consider is that what if the divorce or the separation is an eye opener for the person and they get their shit together and have to now do things differently, right? It's interesting to see. I mean, because we are, for a lot of us, we are wanting things to go well, and to, so we try to think like, okay, if I can just stabilize all these things myself. But I don't know if it works like that. Like if you're not speaking your truth, and that's why, I have a lot of people who come in their 40s, the fuck it 40s, and they're like, I am fucking done trying to be the stabilizing force in this family, right? Whether I have men do it, I have women do it, like that they're just like, I can't live like this anymore. And that's when that you've now really known like, oh, this has not been a healthy thing and I really need some space from it.
Yeah, and I think that comes from like what have been the supports emotionally to get us to this place? What has been happening? How have I been participating in this? Like we use the word dependent or we use the word attached relationship, and there are ways in which those words are, kind of flooded with theory talk, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think there's ways for us to use those words in a very practical way where we can say, okay, this relationship has served me well at this stage of my life, but now it seems that I'm changing, I'm growing. I want something else. I want something to be different. Once you've kind of seen something and you're like, oh, that feels really emotionally immature. And I've had this really profound experience where I feel like I'm growing in a way that's not where the other person is continuing to grow or change.
Right.
And so every 7 years we have a pretty significant change during our development, during our stages in life. And so it's important for us to kind of look at that. So if we're, young and we're setting up our career and we're putting all of our energy and effort there, within 7 years, you're going to start to kind of wonder, okay, what's next? Or what is the thing that needs to happen? For those of us that choose to have children, or are coupled, we make some different shifts that happen and change that relationship. Those kids are changing from being little people to big people to moving out of your house. All of those kinds of big shifts are happening kind of throughout our lives. And that can even be something as small as our own change to our health of I'm now in my 40s and I need to get healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to now start investing my time, money, energy into being a more healthy person. And it's like, well, how does that then change the boundaries? And how does that then change my relationship? Is my partner going to be resentful of this time and effort I'm spending on myself? Is it okay for me to be healthy in this way and my partner to not be focused and not share my goal? All of those things have to do with emotionally, where are my boundaries? Where can I invest into myself? And for that to be okay for the people around me and for them to have to make maybe some shifts or some adjustments themselves
Right.
about how they feel about that.
Right. And, it's interesting. You're reminding me, I mean, there's been multiple things, but I know like when I've really known I need to do something for me and I do that or get involved in that or whatever. And, I'll tell my husband and he'll be like, okay, go for it or whatever. But later on, he'll be like, wow, like you really did it and you went for it. And that has now inspired me to go do XYZ for myself, right? It doesn't have to be the same thing, but it's this idea that, you put energy into this, you said you wanted to do this, you did it, and you're rocking it. And, I am inspired by it. So I think, it's not necessarily something, again, back to the idea of it being selfish, but it's more of like you're taking care of yourself, which, by the way, I wanted to say, like, anybody who have children in their house who are, preteens, teens, those people, hopefully you're having them do a lot of things around the house that they can very easily do, like laundry or dishes or cleaning or whatever, because part of this too is like raising independent people, right? Your kids are not going to be kids forever. They're going to go off and we want them to be independent. So part of this is, how do we set that tone in the house that it is important, and that we all are a part of a team, and that we all have different parts that we do, and that, part of that for the kids is, doing their part as well.
And learning to take care of themselves. I had that.
Bingo.
It's okay. I had that conversation with my almost 14-year-old where he asked me to make him lunch. And I said, I think me continuing to make all of your food is preventing you from doing some things for yourself. And as much as I want to make a meal for you,
yes,
and I want to care for you in that way, I'm now starting to really realize that that's keeping you from making your own lunch, fixing your own frozen pizza. Those are really reasonable 14-year-old skills.
Yes.
And if I keep doing it for you, even if I want to, because I'm caring for you, it's actually creating a more codependent relationship. It's creating and preventing you from expanding your own skill sets and being able to care for yourself. And so sometimes all of our helping these kids gets in the way of them developing that independence. And it's a really good example, because I think a lot of times I see women in therapy that are in their 40s and they've done the hard work of raising littles, and they've really lost themselves.
Yeah.
Some women never even fully develop. They move directly from their parents' home into a relationship, and so they just keep serving and meeting the needs of others. Then they start having children. They're continuing to meet the needs of others. And they get to about 40 and they're like, I don't even know what I want. I can't even figure out what is healthy for me or where I want to go to dinner. A lot of times I teach teenage girls that they need to show up in the relationship. They many times will be, let's pretend, asked out on a date. And the date says, hey, where do you want to go to dinner? And they go, I don't know, wherever you'd like. And that works really well because they want to be liked and they want this other person to want to go out with them. But if that continues to be the case and they never show up and choose a restaurant in 6 months or 6 years or whatever, they're going to be really mad that their partner never asked them where they want to go eat. They never even think to ask them because they've been set up the relationship to be this way, where the person is taught that what they need and what they want is more valuable than the other person. And unfortunately, by not choosing, you're choosing. Yes. And that's really tough to learn when we're young and we're like, it's fine, we'll go wherever you like. But you're showing somebody that your opinion doesn't matter by not showing up and having one.
Right. And you have your own personality, and that's the whole point of in friendships, relationships, like show up as yourself. If you love pizza and you would only eat pizza, if you could eat it, tell the person, I want a pizza. I love pizza. Here's my favorite pizza place, right? Versus like, or if you're like, I'll do anything but hamburgers. I hate hamburgers. Like, I don't want to eat hamburgers. Like, have an opinion, right? Where it's like, because part of that is your personality and you're telling people who you are in those moments of questions that get asked about, what do you want to do? Where do you want to eat? Whatever the thing is. And so, yeah, I'm glad that you do that with teenage girls. That's very important.
Well, and it's after, I worked in a domestic violence shelter for 9 years. And after kind of having that experience of what actually happens in these relationships, that someone becomes so controlling and so self-absorbed that they don't even consider that the other person is valuable in the relationship. And obviously
Right.
that's, control at the nth degree, and we've really kind of lost what's healthy and unhealthy at that point. But at the same time, I think it's these small little choices early on in our relationships that contribute to what becomes later in our relationship, how these small little things make a huge
Yes.
difference. And for so many women that I'm seeing, where it's like, I don't even know what I like. I don't even know what I want to do. I don't know how this works. They then have to go through this process of like, okay, I need you to take a weekend away. And Megan, you used to do this. I don't know if you still do it, but you would take a weekend away, even if you didn't really even leave town. You would go get a hotel room
Yep.
and you would spend a weekend by yourself, and just to kind of renew your own battery. But it also gave you a moment where other people's needs were not overriding your own, so that you could spend some time to say, what do I want? What do I want to eat? Maybe I don't want to eat anything. Maybe I need to take a walk. Maybe I need to take a nap. Maybe I need to whatever. But it's about you. And
Yes.
it's in this period of isolation where no one else's needs need to be considered.
Yes.
And that can be the only way we get to figuring out ourselves, is by getting ourselves into that bubble and saying, okay, here's where this is going to now be glaringly obvious that,
Yes.
oh, here's what I need. Here's what I want. If I get by myself and I can't make decisions based on what everybody else needs, and I'm in this space of making my own choices. Unfortunately, when everybody else is around, it's hard. It's
Right.
hard for us to put that down, the everybody else's needs get to come before my own. Everybody else is louder than me, whatever that may look like, and just say, okay, what do I like? What do I even enjoy anymore? Because
Right.
sometimes some of those personality features, some of that identity is never fully fleshed out about who I am and what I want at,
Right.
kind of a different stage in life.
100%. And, not only was that helpful for me, getting away for a weekend or whatever, but it was also helpful for my husband and my kids to see, like, and for me to know that dad's got it. Kids are going to still be alive when I get home. Like, oh, they actually had a really good time, without me. And that's okay too. I can have a good time without them. They can have a good time without me. I mean, it just helped everything sort of, come together in a way where, sometimes we make up these stories in our heads around like, oh, they would never be able to survive without me, or he doesn't know how to do the thing that the kid really likes and whatever. And maybe that's okay. Maybe we've created that story for ourselves, and that stepping away from that, we realize, like, they can do it. They've got this. And they appreciate you more when you come home and they're like, oh, we had a good time, but we also really missed you. It can be a both and. The thing that I was thinking about when you were talking is this idea of the both and, that, so many things, I think, we get stuck sometimes in thinking that things are really, really black and white. And I like this idea of maybe they're more of a rainbow of options, where it's like, I can say no to something, and then I can change my mind and say, well, actually, I can fit that in my schedule. Or I can say yes to something, and then I can change my mind and say, actually, I just realized it's not going to fit, or whatever the thing is. And so I think when people, I remember when I was doing CPE in graduate school, I remember I thought if you made an appointment with someone, you could not cancel it. And I remember the supervisor teaching me of like, Megan, if your dentist calls and says, they're going to be out the day that you have your dentist appointment, are you upset at the dentist that she's canceling your appointment? And I'm like, no, she's rescheduling it to something else. And I was like, oh my gosh, right? This light bulb went off in my head. Like, like the world is not going to end if I have to break an appointment or say like, oh, whoops, I can't do that day. Let's try something else. And so, I was 25 when I learned that, but, it's just funny to have those experiences where you learn like the world is not going to end if this thing that, I thought was going to happen is not going to happen. So seeing things a little bit more in that rainbow of options realm versus the black and the white of the yes, hard yes, hard no, that maybe things are a little bit more flexible.
And I think we're inviting other people, like we kind of talk about modeling, we talk about kind of saying like, hey, there's enough flexibility in this relationship, and I'm confident enough that you can handle the disappointment of me saying like, hey, it's Friday night. I know we made plans, but I'm absolutely wiped out. I would not be fun company tonight.
Yes.
And to allow that other person to handle that and not threaten the relationship and not it's the end of the world, but just to say like, please forgive me, I need to do something different. And it can be something like, I'm just too tired to be constructive on a Friday night,
Yeah.
and I need to modify the plan. And most people are like, I
Of course.
see you, I get
Yeah.
that, let's do it. Totally make the change.
And so being able to be honest, right? Like that's honest. And it's also a little bit emotionally vulnerable. It's vulnerable, right? To say like, here is where I'm at right now. There's, where you're really sharing yourself, instead of saying like, you could make something up and say like, oh, I forgot I had blah, 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 right? Or what's the harm in trying to be vulnerable to say, here's where I'm at? I think that vulnerability does invite the people around us to also be vulnerable with us, to say like, when they're at a spot where they're just like, I thought I was going to be able to do this, and I'm just like, I can't. Like, can we all have enough space for each other to be honest with each other, which might also involve some vulnerability as well. Now, the key is also knowing who you can and can't be vulnerable with, which might need to be a whole nother episode.
It is. I think it's hard for us to say can't. To be honest, I think we want to be perfect and that all the balls are in the air and I'm handling it and managing it lovely and it looks perfect and everybody is happy and all those things. But to be honest with ourselves, to say like, I can't do this and I don't have to do this, and to give ourselves a little bit of grace to say, it doesn't mean that you couldn't make a different choice. Absolutely, you could force yourself to go do something, but being able to use that language that's like, I'm going to choose to be honest. And a lot of times, I don't think we talk often enough about how hard it is to just be honest.
Yes.
And allowing honesty to not try to control what is this person going to think about me because I'm being honest.
Right. Yeah. Whew, good topics. Well, thank you all for joining us today. If you're interested in what we've had to talk about, you can find us at mindfulness-center.com. And we'll be back in a week or so with some more good conversations about boundaries. Have a great day.